Today we're going to be in Luke chapter 24, and we're really kind of starting on verse 7, but we'll refresh from verse 1. So Luke chapter 24, beginning in verse 1. And it says, "Now upon the first day of the week, very early in the morning, they came unto the sepulchre, bringing the spices which they had prepared, and certain others with them." And so the women is who is referred to here, and they had prepared the spices before, and usually they would bring between 75 pounds and 125 pounds of spices to cover and treat the body after death. And so they gathered the spices, but they could not bring them, and they couldn't, dress the body because it was the Sabbath. And in fact, there were two Sabbaths, a high Sabbath as a result of the feast, Passover, and then the regular Saturday Sabbath. But here it is, very early, the first day of the week, Sunday. And so the Sabbath is over, so now they can bring those spices that they had gathered. And so they brought them, and there were certain others with them that came to the sepulchre. Verse 2, "And they found the stone rolled away from the sepulchre, and entered in, and found not the body of the Lord Jesus. And it came to pass, as they were much perplexed thereabout, behold, two men stood by them in shining garments. And as they were afraid and bowed down their faces to the earth, they said unto them, Why seek ye the living among the dead? He is not here, but is risen. Remember how he spake unto you when he was yet in Galilee?" And so you have the angels here speaking to the women who were very perplexed. They came in, they entered right into the tomb, and they were very perplexed about Jesus not being there. But the angels, I wonder sometimes about that difference between angels and men. Jesus had told them what was going to happen, right? In Galilee. He had said, I've got to go to Jerusalem, I've got to suffer, die, raise again in 3 days. He said it all. But when they came to the tomb and found it empty, they were very perplexed. And the angel said, "Why do you seek the living among the dead?" And I just don't know. I wonder if angels are just more accustomed to listening to the Lord and just think, well, that he said that is what's going to happen. But the people, the men, are listening to this, and it's all going over their head. I mean, it's just all the time. Jesus says, "I've got so much to say to you." Just the night before, he was tried and taken into the high priest's home. He said, "I have so much more to tell you, but you can't bear it yet." But after I've ascended, you'll be able to hear it. More will be taught. The Spirit will come and will teach you and lead you into all truth. And so the angels they're like, why are you here seeking the living among the dead? Don't you remember he told you in Galilee this was going to happen? And you know what they did then? Remember, did it ever happen to you that you hear something but you don't get it until after it happens, and someone says, "Well, I said that's what was going to happen," and you're like, "Well, I had no idea you were serious, or it would happen like that." The angels are a little matter of fact, said this would happen. But they were perplexed. So anyway, the two men stood by in shining garments, and as they were afraid and bowed down their faces to the earth, they said unto them, Why seek ye the living among the dead? He is not here, but is risen. Remember how he spake unto you when he was yet in Galilee, saying, The Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men, and be crucified, and the third day rise again. He even, he gave as much detail as the third day rise again. But none of that made sense to them, because they expected him to be their king and Messiah as they understood the Messiah, not as the prophets declared the Messiah. But I don't blame them. I don't imagine I would have picked up any more than what they picked up. Probably less. Verse 8, and they remembered his words. So now it's not like, well, he never said that. I don't remember him saying that. They did remember. But they not only had to go into the tomb and find him not there, they had to have angels explain it to them and remind them before they remembered. In verse 9, and returned from the sepulchre and told all these things unto the 11 and to all the rest. Usually it's the 12, but one was hanging around. Sorry. Judas is gone at this point, and so now it's the 11. And so they went back, and remember, all the others were, I'm sorry guys, were in that room waiting as the Lord had told them, and kind of fearful. They were fearful that the Jews, the rulers, they didn't think we're done, getting rid of this sect, as they might call it. And so they're kind of huddled together in this room, in that upper room. And so the women, they went and they were going to address this body, but they went back and told the 11. And of course they don't believe it either. So they told all these things unto the 11 and to all the rest. It was Mary Magdalene and Joanna and Mary the mother of James and other women that were with them, which told these things unto the apostles. And their words seemed to them as idle tales, and they believed them not. They flat out didn't believe it. But again, this is pretty unbelievable. This is the most remarkable thing to ever happen. And so they couldn't believe it. The women that were there didn't believe it. They were perplexed, and then the angels explained, and so now they're running back, and no doubt they're excited. And it's a hard thing when someone's excited about something to go tell people and they just say, sounds like an idle tale. I don't buy it. No way. Yes?
First of all, I think at the beginning they were in shock. The Lord was gone. And he told them, but they didn't quite get it. We're all going to, sometimes when you go through shock with things, like my nephew with his wife passing, that was shocking. It was shocking to me. We're all going to die. It shouldn't shock any of us. She got to die in an easy way, and you're asleep.
Yeah.
There's no better way, as young and asleep. You hear maybe old people dying in their sleep, but you don't hear younger people dying in their
Right.
sleep. So
Yeah.
what better way to die? No cancer, no accident, no whatever. You can suffer a lot dying, and that was an easy way to go, but it's still shocking.
Yeah.
So they were in shock about the Lord being gone. Number two, angels are not like people. We don't think like angels, and they don't think like us. So that scenario. And the third thing is, the women at that time were not highly thought of. And when you search the other gospels about the women telling the men, they didn't want to believe anything they had to say just because of the fact that they were women. They were not highly regarded in those days, and maybe I shouldn't be speaking right now, I don't know, but anyway, it just, in those days, women had, the women followed behind.
Yeah.
And it was the fact that Jesus acknowledged the women.
Yes.
That was not typical of that
That
time.
wasn't. In that culture, I'm not 100% sure at this time in history, but I'm pretty sure that their testimony wasn't really admissible. But Jesus, that's one of the amazing things about the Lord, how much he acknowledged and relied on and kind of communed with women and considered them important in his ministry. And various things are noted, like that women actually supported the ministry of Jesus, and it's called out in Scripture. So, so I don't imagine it would have made a difference if it was men coming back, though, either.
No,
So, in this case, they didn't believe the women, but they probably wouldn't have believed men either. But they're excited. They come back. They want to tell, we saw these angels. He's risen. I can just imagine their excitement. Now, after the first thing clicked, he said, he was going to rise again in 3 days. Now maybe all the other things he said that didn't make sense at the time started running through their head. And they're thinking, he is alive. And having seen that horrific, traumatizing death, and I mean traumatizing certainly to him, but traumatizing to all who witnessed it, now they hear from angels that he's risen, he's alive, he is not dead. And they come and they hit the wet blanket of these people saying, no, we don't believe it. Sounds like idle tales.
Brother Jason, and it's interesting, Luke does point out more of the ministry of women than all the others, but at the same time, not that angels are not intelligent, but in Peter, it says they were searching these things out already about the suffering of Christ and how the glory to follow. First Peter chapter 1, verse 10 on says that they were searching these things out.
Amen.
And so they didn't know how exactly all this was going to happen, but I would imagine there was shouting in heaven when this happened with angels. And so I kind of look at this message, this message to these, why are you seeking the letter? He's alive.
Yeah.
I think there was some excitement behind it.
Yeah.
And so it was just kind of but we don't get that excited. We didn't, if our minds aren't, so giving credit a little bit to the men, I mean, we're just as fallible and shocking, these things shock us, but these angels are intelligent, and so they've been searching these things out. They've been trying to figure out, how is this going to happen?
Right.
So,
Amen. They've been around for a long time, praising the Lord, doing his bidding, going where he sent them. And now, they are witnessing the reason that he was born, the reason he came.
and the prophets prophesied about this, Peter says, so they just didn't get it.
Yeah. Yeah, they didn't get it. The whole thing was shocking to them. And they had built their identity on Christ and on his kingdom. Remember the times they said, will you at this time restore the kingdom? Will you? And he's like, not the way you think. But he is building his kingdom. They're waiting, but this was not how they expected things to go. Everyone understand or heard about the concept of confirmation bias. You believe a certain thing, so you look for evidence that supports that thing, and you dismiss evidence that contradicts that thing. It's within all of us. We can't help it, although we can try to, fight against that some. But we just naturally see the evidences that support what we're thinking. For instance, the moment you buy a Mazda, all of a sudden there's a lot more Mazdas on the road. Probably not, but you see them now because you're aware of them and you're thinking about it. Many things like that. And so, all the things Jesus said about his death, they're just maybe making it figurative. They're washing it away, forgetting about it, whatever. Now here it is, and he died, and that was traumatizing. And now he's alive again, and so it's the whole thing is a little unbelievable to the disciples and the women and all that. Any other comments? Okay. So let's see here. Their words seemed, verse 11, their words seemed to them as idle tales, and they believed them not. Then arose Peter and ran unto the sepulchre. And stooping down, he beheld the linen clothes laid by themselves, and departed, wondering in himself at that which was come to pass. And so he ran, from this room in Jerusalem outside the city up to Golgotha, or maybe down the hill from it to the sepulcher. And he stoops down and he sees the linen, that Jesus had been wrapped in, sitting beside, and then he departed. We learn from John that John went in and that he outran Peter on the way. And so Peter stayed out, John went on inside. But they find the clothes sitting there and, orderly. He was wondering in himself at that which was come to pass. He's trying to wrap his head around it. Verse 13, and behold, two of them went that same day to a village called Emmaus, which was from Jerusalem about 80 furlongs. And they talked together of all these things which had happened. And it came to pass that while they communed together and reasoned, Jesus himself drew near and went with them. Now, I know that Jesus had a lot of things to do while he was on earth. And he was busy about his Father's business. I mean, he didn't waste a moment. Now, and that's just another thing. He did rest. We know he rested. We know he resorted. He sometimes took time to himself. Sometimes he prayed. We know he was tempted before his ministry began. He was baptized. He did all those things. He healed, just multitudes. And there were days that he healed so many that he was just exhausted from it. Because remember, he's still human. He's still in the flesh. And the body gets tired. So he had all these things to do. But consider this, that one of the things that the Lord God had for him to do is to talk with these two on the road to Emmaus. And so whatever else Jesus was doing, I mean, he had risen, and we know that he appeared to the women. Luke doesn't get into it, but we know that the women were there, and Jesus appeared to them. They thought he was the gardener. And Mary clung to him, and he said, you can't cling to me right now. I've got to go. So all these things that he had to do, this is still part of it. And he's got an appointment to meet these two that are on the way to Emmaus. And so Jesus himself, after having risen that morning, walks with them to Emmaus. While they communed together and reasoned, Jesus himself drew near and went with them. So everyone, all the disciples, all the believers are trying to get their head around what is going on. They're trying to make sense of it. They're reasoning with each other. They're communing and reasoning together. What could be? What happened? They've heard what the women said, not only that he's not dead, he's risen, but they had spoken with him and talked with the Lord. And verse 16 says, "But their eyes were holden that they should not know him. So they think they're walking with a stranger. And he said unto them, What manner of communications are these that ye have one to another, as ye walk and are sad? And the one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answering, said unto him, Art thou only a stranger in Jerusalem, and hast not known the things which are come to pass there in these days? And he said unto them, What things? Now, is it because he's ignorant? Does he not know? Does he sometimes say things in a way that would draw conversation out of someone or relate to them in a way to get them to talk? He says what things, knowing what they're thinking. He knows their thoughts and he knows these things, but he says what thing. It reminds me of him calling for Adam in the garden and saying, Where are you? He knows precisely where Adam is, but he wants to commune with people. And so here he says, What things? And they said unto him, Concerning Jesus of Nazareth. And that's kind of funny. They're talking to him about him. And, and they continue, that Jesus of Nazareth is used just right past his death, right all the way through it. Keep in mind that Jesus of Nazareth is a little bit, again, Nazareth had a reputation, and it wasn't good. And so, but Jesus often used that of himself. Others who loved him used that of him. And here, concerning Jesus of Nazareth, which was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people. Now, I don't want to sell them short, and I'm not certain of this, but it feels a little like they're missing part of what he was. And you know how sometimes you might be in favor of a unpopular political person, and among supporters you'll be very vocal, but among those who aren't, maybe you tone it down a little. Jesus had died, and they're saying, well, he was a prophet. Now, maybe they're not pulling back at all, but I wonder about it here. Which was because they didn't say he was Messiah. Now, maybe the fact that he died and they didn't know if he was going to continue on with this kingdom, maybe he wasn't the Messiah, but maybe he was a prophet. I don't know. And like I said, I don't ever want to put words into the those reported in the Bible in their mouth. But it does seem a little funny there.
Jason, it seems to be the same conversation that the
Yeah.
And of course, Moses talked about the prophet coming, but anyway.
Yeah, and he definitely is a prophet,
Yeah. priest,
and king, right? So there's, they're exactly right in referring to him as a prophet. And mighty in deed and word before God and all the people. And how the chief priests and our rulers delivered him to be condemned to death and have crucified him. Now look at this. But we trusted, but we have all confidence, we used to trust, we trusted that it had been he which should have redeemed Israel. And beside all this, today is the third day since these things were done. That is, they're not real confident here. And which, maybe once Jesus revealed himself and a few hours after they had time to think about it, they're like, oh man, we're talking to him. And we softened it up a little, man. Okay. But we trusted that it had been him which should have redeemed Israel. They're like, man, we thought and trusted, we put our trust in him. We thought he was the one that was going to redeem Israel. But he was crucified. And besides all that, it's the third day since all this was done. They're like, how do you not know? I mean, even if you are a stranger in town, how do you not know about this? So verse 22, yea, and certain women also of our company made us astonished, which were early at the sepulchre, and when they found not the body, not his body, they came saying that they had also seen a vision of angels, which said he was alive. And certain of them, which were with us, went to the sepulchre and found it even so as the women had said, but him they saw not. Well, the women had seen him, but when the men went, they found it like they said, like the women said, but they didn't see him. Then he said unto them, O fools, and slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Ought not Christ, not just prophet, not the one you had trusted, shouldn't the Christ, the Messiah, the anointed one, shouldn't Christ have suffered these things and entered into his glory? Shouldn't he? Because the prophet said he would. Because he said he would. So why don't you believe? It's weird to hear this, for him to say, oh, fools. And I wonder if that's as jarring to them as it would be to us today. And it's surprising that they didn't, maybe just that moment, think, oh, this must be him. But they didn't. They didn't until he, they invited him in, which we'll get to. Until then, they didn't know it was him. Yes?
It's kind of interesting. He's playing a little coy for the first half of it, as if he doesn't know this story, and immediately kind
Boom!
of breaks character here. It's interesting. And part of that, I don't know if we want to call that a righteous frustration, or if that was him. Because it's not a lapse in judgment. We know that. We know everything he does is for intention. I wonder what his intention was there, if not pure frustration. If he wanted to reveal himself to them, but chose not to for some reason. I don't know.
Right?
And the fact that we could be all guilty of this, thoughts that were running through my mind were the Bereans. They went home and studied the scriptures. Slow of They just listened to what the Pharisees and them said. And it's possible the Pharisees said, Messiah's coming and his kingdom is going to, that's
Yeah.
what they got, because that was the message.
Yes.
And yet they didn't go home and study it for themselves, maybe.
Right?
So it's, and I'm just saying, interjecting, it's very possible, where there's not only, it feels like the teaching, that was the teaching, that's what they got. That they weren't the only ones that taught.
No, far
So,
from it.
John the Baptist, are you sure? Are you
Yes.
the one? So the teaching was there, but people have to go home and read it for themselves, and maybe they'll find out there's more things there that is missed.
Well, any other comments? So that brings two thoughts to mind. Today, you have people with some half-baked inclination about what the Bible says, and you hear them speaking, and you're like, oh my goodness, that is not what it says at all. And they're telling other people, oh, this is happening, and especially when you get into prophecy, and they're like, oh, it's the 6th red moon, so Jesus is coming tonight, and all this stuff, and people that don't understand. And then again, there's all the prophecies that I read, and I read them, and I'm trying to make sense of them, but I guarantee you, when they come to pass, I'm going to look back and say, why couldn't I see it? It's been there the whole time. Why didn't I see it? I suspect. So, it's crazy. You read Isaiah, and he just goes from, the Messiah will come, and he'll do this, and he'll establish his kingdom and rule forever, and you don't see the break. There's a little comma there with 1,000 or 2,000 years between it in some of these prophecies. Now you go to Isaiah 53, there it is. Suffering, and that he would take on the sin of this people. And that's how he's going to restore Israel. But it'd be easy to read over that. And but Jesus also he preached it to him, but it's even still easy to read over it, to listen over it, to not get it. And he's just, fools, shouldn't Christ have suffered? What about Isaiah 53? It's right there. Shouldn't he have suffered? But you're saying, because he died, well, we had trusted. Guess that's over. A lot of them, felt like, boy, that was we built our whole identity on him, and now we got to go, I guess, back to fishing or something. But so Jesus, he takes the time. He said, Christ should have suffered and entered into his glory. Any other comments? Okay. Verse 27. And beginning at Moses and all the prophets, he expounded unto them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. I would love to hear that message from Jesus about him. Can you imagine? Oh, man. I'd be covered in chills. For him to talk about the burning bush, for him to talk about the Lord coming and the firstborn and the lamb, and oh my goodness, the ram caught in the thicket. I guess he started at Moses, but he didn't go back to Abraham. But although if he started at Moses, he could be talking, when he said Moses and the prophets, he's talking about the entire Old Testament. So probably is talking about Abraham and Isaac, and he just showed himself in all those stories. All the way through. Unbelievable. And so they're walking, and this is one of the most amazing messages, I'm sure, ever preached. all the things concerning himself, which, by the way, is great proof that the Old Testament is about Jesus. And for these churches and religions that say the Old Testament was for Israel, we don't need it, we're not reading it, they're missing so much. They're missing so much. Jesus thought they needed it. And so he explained himself in all those things. And they drew nigh unto the village whither they went. And he made as though he would have gone further. So he's still, playing this part. Like he's going somewhere else. But they constrained him, saying, Abide with us, for it is toward evening. And the day is far spent. And he went in to tarry with them. And it came to pass, as he sat at meat with them, he took bread and blessed it, and brake it, and gave to them. Now, he's a visitor, he's a guest, but here he is breaking bread. And their eyes were opened, and they knew him. And he vanished out of their sight. Man, that's... There he was. They had just spent all this time, heard the best message they'd ever heard in their life. Learned a lot. Their eyes were open. And then their eyes were really open. They're like, oh, it's him. And then gone. Now they constrained him to come in because the day's far spent. It's evening. No one should be out traveling. They're like, nope, we're going back. They were excited. Oh, my goodness. We're like, we had trusted and we thought, and the women said they saw him, but you know how they are, and blah, 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 all this stuff. And here he is talking to them, and they're like, oh, we got to go back. And they said one to another, did not our heart burn within us while he talked with us by the way, and while he opened to us the scriptures? They knew this was something. And they felt it, but they didn't know quite what until he revealed himself. And they rose up the same hour and returned to Jerusalem, and found the 11 gathered together, and them that were with them. And so they and how could you sleep? What are you going to, I think any one of us would have just got right back on the road and went back. That is too exciting. And you got to tell someone, when you've seen that, now they know he is risen, he is alive, this isn't over. Not at all. And in fact, all of that Old Testament was about him. About him. They had heard the stories, they believed them, but now they see him in a whole different light. Saying, the Lord is risen indeed, and hath appeared to Simon. And they told what things were done in the way, and how he was known of them in breaking of bread. He said that did it. He broke the bread right there with us, and we knew him. And as they thus spake, Jesus himself stood in the midst of them, and saith unto them, Peace be unto you. So finally, here he appears to all of those that were there. Yes?
Is there anything particular about him breaking the bread, that being the thing that indicated to peace to?
It says he broke the bread and their eyes were opened. Now, it seems a supernatural, perhaps, concealing of who he was when it says their eyes were holden. I don't know. I don't know if that was natural or supernatural. When he broke the bread, their eyes were open. Is that what did it, or did the Spirit remove this concealment at the same time? I don't know. But at that time, they knew who he was. And they go all the way back, and they're talking about him, and then there he is. There he is. So I wonder how many were doubting even while they're telling the story, because now they've heard from the women, they've heard from Peter and John having been there. Now they said, oh, he has appeared to Peter, to Simon. He didn't earlier when he was at the tomb, but in between there, he appeared to Simon. And then he appeared to these, he appeared to these two. Was Simon one of them? Maybe Cleopas and maybe Simon? I don't know. I think there's a way to know, but I don't remember how. I got to look at it again. Anyone know? Does anyone know who these two? I know Cleopas was one. What's that? Yeah. But so how many were there still doubting that it was true? And then there he is.
It says they came from our own company, so they were there when they said that these are idol tales, and maybe they were the leaders saying this.
Yeah.
Well, these are this
Yeah.
is idol tales.
They could have been the ones.
And so Jesus said, they had he was a prophet. He was coming to do this and that, and then now it's the third day. It makes me almost wonder if they even believe that, the third day.
So there is significance to this third day.
There is, and it's a third day. What's happening? The other thing with the eyes bulging, we know that the Lord, when the disciples were on the ship, walked by as if he walked by. They didn't know who he was at that time. I find it interesting those times, and I don't have the answer, but in those times, as opposed to in Matthew 17 when he's up on the mountaintop, they did recognize
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
But it's interesting.
Is it a supernatural concealing? Is it, I think, unbelief, yeah. Jesus, did he look that different? He had the marks of the crucifixion. And he always will. That's one of the crazy things. We'll have perfect bodies, and he'll still have the scars. Yes?
Well, I was thinking it might have been Peter as well, but it says when they got to Jerusalem, they found the 11 gathered together.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
some people believe that when he broke the bread, they saw the scars in his hands. That, the Bible didn't tell us that.
It doesn't, and so it's conjecture.
It feels like a husband and wife, if I remember right. I just don't remember.
Could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, could be. I remember thinking that as well.
Thinking what?
Husband and wife, Cleopas.
Oh, the two on the road?
Yeah, yes. I remember reading that. So there he is, and he appears before all of them. I guess verse 35, and they told what things were done in the way and how he was known of them in breaking of bread. That almost sounds like it was just natural. When they saw him breaking bread, that's what triggered it. And as they thus spake, Jesus himself stood in the midst of them and saith unto them, Peace be unto you. But they were terrified and affrighted, and supposed they had seen a spirit. Now they knew Jesus intimately. And so I think his appearance looked different, And he said unto them, Why are ye troubled? He had already said, Peace be unto you, but that didn't do the trick. They were horribly terrified. Why do thoughts arise in your hearts? Behold my hands and my feet, that it is I myself. Handle me and see, for a spirit hath not flesh and bones, as ye see me have. So, I just want to point out, and it's not even in the book of Luke, but in the book of John, when Mary, tries to hold on to the Lord. I used to think Jesus is like, don't touch me. I can't touch anything. No one can touch me. till I go to my Father, you're going to contaminate me. No, that's not it. She was touching, she was holding him. But he's like, don't, I got to go. She touched him. Here he's saying, go ahead. Handle me, see, it's me. And it's a body. It's a glorified body, but it's a body, flesh and bone, he says. And so, so he is able to be handled. And what's that? Glorified. Glorified body, yeah. So what an exciting moment, an exciting time. They come all the way back to Jerusalem. Jesus is already there. Not appeared to them until they were talking about him, but there he is with the 11. And I have a confusion about this as well, because if there's 11, then Thomas is there, but Thomas had missed and was surprised, and so anyway, I'm trying to figure that all out, but